the world. One of the lovely things about doing the AFINet webinars is that we have people from all over the world. And thank you, Sari or Emmy, for putting on the recording, which is great. So hello, everybody. My name's Richard Velleman. I'm one of AFINet's trustees, and I'm standing in today for AFINet's chair, Dr. Gallus Bischoff, who's on holiday, as he normally chairs these sessions, as he chairs AFINet generally. Welcome, everybody, to another AFINet webinar. AFINet is Addiction and the Family International Network, and as many of you know, but some of you aren't members, so I'll just run through a little bit about what we do. We work to promote the well-being of family members and other people affected by someone else's use of alcohol or drugs or gambling by bringing together researchers, policymakers, practitioners, and experts through experience. Membership of AFINet is free, and you can apply by going on the website, the AFINet website, and clicking onto the membership tab, and you'll see applying for membership under there. This series of webinars started in October 2020, partly as a result of the pandemic, where we found we couldn't meet up with people. We were having to cancel the planned conference that we had planned, and we thought it was a good idea as a way of people who are interested in addiction and the family to meet together. And to our pleasure, it's been very successful. So it's been running now for it started October. So this is the end of the second year of us running these. As a small charity, we have very little money, so we welcome donations. If anyone feels that they're able to give a donation to attend, again, the information is on the flyer and the information is on the website, so it would be very helpful if people could give a small donation, but obviously if not, it's not that material. It's more important that you attend than it is that you give money. And finally, before I introduce today's topic, I want to remind everybody about the AFINet conference. It's our third conference, our second online one. It's this month, it's the 29th and 30th of September. So the Thursday and Friday of that week. And as with the previous online one, we've taken the opportunity of it being online to stagger the timings so that we have timings that people from all over the world can attend. The way that we do it, because we're still very European centric, I'm afraid, is that it means that everyone from Europe can attend all of the sessions, and for that matter from South Africa, but it means one day it accommodates everybody from the far east of the world, so people from New Zealand and Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, where we have quite a lot of members, they can all attend, and the other day accommodates people from the far west of the world, based on a Eurocentric vision, and that means people from the North and South American continent can attend. So if you haven't already registered, I encourage you to do that. You have to go onto the website and go onto conference, and you will see the program and how to register. Okay, without further ado, let's move on today. It's a great pleasure today to introduce Dr. Sari Castrén from the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, who's going to talk to us today about developing and implementing support services and treatment for affected others of gamblers in Finland. Sari is a practicing clinical psychologist, and she actively trains professionals in the addiction field in both motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy approaches. She's currently working as a research manager at the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, and she also is an associate professor of the University of Turku in the Faculty of Social Sciences, and is also at the University of Helsinki in the Faculty of Medicine. So she wears a great number of hats. Her research focus is on developing and implementing interventions for those who gamble and their loved ones, and investigating the efficacy of treatments. She's currently in charge of a project translating and evaluating the suitability of the Canadian lower risk gambling guidelines into a Finnish cultural context, as well as developing support and treatment for concerned and significant others of gamblers. but she's also involved in research that explores gambling disorders and harmful social media use. And finally, she's also looking at the convergence of gambling and gaming. So there's a whole range of different interesting interests, which obviously fit very well with our interests in AFINet. So Sari, without further ado, over to you to talk to us about developing and implementing support services and treatment for affected others of gamblers in Finland. Actually, having said over to you, one other thing, small thing to say is, if you have questions, please write them in the chat so you remember the questions and we can go to them immediately afterwards. But if you don't write them there, there'll be an opportunity at the end. Sari's going to talk for about 3/4 of an hour, and then there's ample opportunity for us to have a conversation, questions and answers and discussion after that time. So Sari, over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for having me and having interest in what we do in Finland. I'm so excited to be here and present what we have done in Finland so far and where we're heading. And I find this forum very fruitful forum to discuss with you about your point of views after the presentation. And like Richard said, please feel free to ask questions and stop me during the presentation to have a good conversation. So yes, thank you, Richard, for introducing me. Let me see. Yes, so my many hats are here, and I have collaborated with many of my colleagues to putting up this work that I'm presenting to you tonight. Or tonight, this afternoon, it's 4 o'clock in Finland. We have colleagues from National Institute from Health and Welfare, Anne and Kalle and Johanna. Johanna is present here. So some specific questions you may want to even present to Johanna. I'm so glad, Johanna, you could join us. Virve from University of Helsinki, and then Corinne, Jussi and Hanna had put up some slides from Gambling Clinic Helsinki. So outline of this presentation is that I'm presenting what we've done in an epidemiological study, what we've found actually starting from 2014. Then we peek into qualitative studies, which are actually Johanna's area of interest and expertise. And then I'll introduce a Finnish network for CSOs and what we do there. Then I'll present Helsinki Gambling Clinic's observations in regards to CSOs or affected others. And then some experience from NGOs, and then the recent results of systematic review, which we conducted to trying to find out what would be the most suitable support and treatment for CSOs. And then I'm happy to present and tell in a way the development phase 1, what we've done so far and how we're going to move on. So as I said, that we've been interested to look at the status of CSOs from the population studies. So we've done that. From Finnish Gambling Study and Finnish Gambling Harm Survey, where we've been able to look at the cross-sectional design as well as longitudinal evaluation of year 2016 to 17. Earlier publications are here for further interest. If you want to have a look, I won't go them through, but mainly they are from population studies. These studies, which are run by Anne Salonen in Finland. So main findings, nothing new to you, I believe. The population sample from 2016, we can see that there are more women than men. As population estimates, this corresponds a large number of people. 6% of the respondents reported at least one gambling-related harm caused by someone else, women more than men. And then we also did a clinical sample using Helsinki Gambling Clinic's participants, around 100, where 48% of the respondents were identified as CSOs in 2016, and more men there than women. That explains in that sample that men often report friends and co-workers to be close ones, and females often family members. And 28% of these respondents reported at least one gambling-related harm caused by someone else. Results from a recent gambling harm survey shows we published this study, which you can find with this information. The results show that close to 13% of the participants were affected others, 6% of the participants were family members, 8% had no family relationship with the person who gambled. So that highlights that we have a large group of affected others that may also need different intervention and different tailored way of tackle with the stress that someone else's gambling may cause to them. Women more likely to affected here repeatedly, like from previously. Men were more likely to be non-family members, as I said earlier. 42% of affected others experience gambling-related harms. We used the gambling harm survey where we could detect the harm specifically, and the most common types of harm were emotional, relationship, and financial harms for both family and non-family members. And family members were more likely to experience harm overall and were more likely to experience many types of harm. And that is also really important information for us when we are planning treatment. What type of harms, whether we need to consider how to tackle and how to address different stressors in affected others' everyday life. How to tackle how to tackle with the person who is suffering from emotional harm primarily, or relationship harm, or financial harms. So that is very important information that we have gathered from these epidemiological studies. And furthermore, non-family members were more likely to experience work or study related harms. So it only highlights that it's the multitudinous, it's like a network, and it's like a spider net with these harms that are spreading around with the person who is suffering with the gambling related problems. Participants who were young adults were more likely to experience financial harms, and participants who were women or were family members of the person who gambled were more likely to experience emotional harm. Emotional harm was especially common for those whose parent or child gambled, naturally. And partners and ex-partners of people who gambled experience relationship and financial harms frequently. Those are quite self-explanatory. What struck us in this recent paper was that financial harms seem to affect also ex-partners for long time, and that was something that clinical observations or clinicians often face in the clinical practice, but we could find that also from this study to support the clinical observations. Person with gambling problem was most typically friend. If we look at the here, the variation or spread of the proportion of concerned significant others and their relationship to gamblers, they were friends, spouse, other family members, parents, and work colleagues. Those were the kind of typical ones in a clinical sample, and pretty much the population sample, the same trend was observable. Gambling-related harm for CSOs, the type of gambling-related harm experienced by close ones where emotional stress, distress, health impact, and other financial problems and the spread of other harms are here. Of course, when we are looking at the harms, we need to know and understand that all these harms are pretty much interwoven together. It's not only one, it's one harm feeds another harm. And it's when you're planning a treatment, it's very important to understand that it's not the one harm, one feeds another. Financial harm feeds the relationship problems, and relationship problems are causing stress to family members and upbringing of children and so forth. So then if we look at the recent results of Finnish gambling studies, we pretty much can back up with the similar observations. This is in Finnish, but I'll explain that to you. So problematic gambling increased from 2015 to 2019. The green line is explaining at least one close one has a gambling problem. Blue line is at least one friend, and red line is at least one family member. So we can see that at least for the green light is showing that the amount and prevalence of CSOs are increasing, and that tells us, the treatment developers and clinicians, that we need definitely a treatment and support to prevent harm that is it's affecting other than gambler as well. Kalle Lind was the leading author in this study, and these are the main findings of that population study, pretty much backing up the same results. But here we look at the affected close friends clearly, and family members, which are these abbreviations are telling you, like 13.7% were affected close friends, 10 affected family members, and similar finding, affected family members were typically women, and friends typically men. And affected others who were younger, 15 to 34, and more likely also have gambling problems themselves. And being affected family member was associated with poor perceived health, psychological distress, risky alcohol consumption, and having a gambling problem of their own. So in a way, within the family, the accumulation of the problem was very visible. And again, when we are planning the treatment, it's very important to know what kind of behaviors they may have there, what we need to tackle when we are meeting a family, meeting a gambler with the spouse, or meeting the other close or loved ones that gambling affects. So harms as reported by affected others are gathered here. Being affected family member was associated with gambling participation, having a gambling problem, and risky alcohol consumption. So gathered other addictive or risky behaviors. Emotional harms and relationships harms were the most common types of harm experienced by affected others, and financial harm was the third most common, with affected family members being 2.5 times more likely to experience financial harm than affected close friends. And most affected others were experienced at least one type of gambling-related harm caused by the problem gambling of a close family member.
That much of a chance.
And
that's just a shame.
Yes, somebody has got the mic on, so
Funny.
yes, no worries. And then after these population findings that are very helpful for us in treatment development, we got information from qualitative studies and a little bit more. And Johanna Järvinen-Tassopoulos is a leading researcher in our qualitative and family studies. A group found that gambling as a problem across generations, a study on the impact of gambling on adult children and elderly parents. This was a qualitative analysis, and they found that gambling affects intergenerational relationships. And the main findings were that gambling adult children have delays in independence and rely on parents' help. We can see that also in clinical practice. This enables continued gambling, enabling and paying debts, gambling, even though the parents often, close ones, think that it's the best way to help, is actually enabling gambling even more. And gambling elderly parents have difficulties in accepting help from their grown children due to acquired roles, desire of CSOs to help the gambler, but lack of concrete means. Children in a family with gambling problems, a study on the position of children in a family with gambling problems, as told by non-gambling parents, mostly mother. Again, qualitative analysis, children experience loss at many levels, financial need, loss of connection to the gambling parents, sometimes family rupture. Need to care for children gives purpose to the non-gambling parents and encourages help seeking. Children are also often the reason why the non-gambling parent does not want to break up the family. Really important findings. Then they look at the CSOs and COVID, how it affects an overall relief over the reduction of gambling opportunities when the slot machines and venues were closed. For those who are CSOs of land-based, my mom stopped playing G's because they have been closed. She has saved money, but increases in concern for those who are CSOs for online gamblers, and a relevant quote there. The reduced consumption of gambling was reflected as an overall reduced need for treatment and help services for both gamblers and CSOs during the spring 2020. CSOs were more concerned over service closures than gamblers. However, the concern was for services for gamblers, not the services for themselves. And that is very typical that CSOs are more worried about the gamblers' well-being than their own well-being. Then Johanna is edited a book, Addiction in the Family, which has a really great content about substance and gambling problems in Finnish families, including impacts on spouses, children, and chain of generations. And the book includes both research articles focusing on help and treatment given to CSOs written by experts. Really great handbook for practitioners and educators to to help the, for example, social health workers in their training. Then we have a CSO network, which is also run by Johanna, the Finnish network connecting researchers, developers, treatment professionals, and individuals with lived experience on being CSO of a gambler. Holding discussions involve sharing insights, research results, and ideas to improve the position of CSOs in Finland. And recent themes that were discussed in the network: substance use in general, mental health, intimate partner violence, and BG SOIS measure, which is the harm measure targeted to CSOs. And the aim of this network is to give a voice to CSOs and make their life better in the Finnish society. And then I'm happy to introduce some of the gambling clinic observations which supports our main goal here. What type of treatment modalities CSOs are in need? The services targeted for affected others of gamblers are described here. There are helpline, chat, electrical peer groups, self-help, counseling, family club, peer club, and open house. So quite a variation of treatment or in a way social support, not treatment like blocks of treatment, more like a social support for affected others. And statistics from gambling clinic from years 2017 to 19 showed that during that time around 400 to 500 affected others have contacted Peluri, which is online help services, annually. And during that same time, Tiltti, which is NGO, has had yearly around 20 to 40 persons who visit the place services for the first time. And affected others that are contacting the services are more often women than men, mothers and spouses mainly. And Family Club of Tiltti, Hanna Karmakka-Osare was putting up this slide and was describing when the Tiltti NGO service was established. Group for problem gamblers and their family members together. Meetings are free every other week, arranged online since 2020 due to COVID. And these are Hanna's gathered experiences from Tiltti Family Club. It's not published, but it's an important voice that we can hear from true experiences of help that was received from Tiltti meetings. Increase in understanding the perspective of the other party, both gambler and CSO. Reconstruction of lost confidence, reduction of shame, improvement in self-esteem, improvement in communication, expression of feelings, benefits of meeting others in the same situation, and reflection of meetings being a good source of recovery. And then I'm happy to present our systematic reviews result, which are all actually building up or reflecting these clinical observations from Helsinki Gambling Clinic, highlighting and bringing up Johanna's qualitative studies findings, as well as gambling clinics observations and more. So that is what we put up together, and we wanted to find out and examine the interventions for CSOs and evaluate potential benefits and thematically describe treatment processes that we could find what is the core components that are needed in order to help the CSOs. And we use the stress strain coping support model, which serve as a theoretical framework in our review. And this is, I believe, very familiar to you because in our opinion, it provides a suitable conceptual framework for understanding how CSOs may be supported. And model postulates that being a CSO of an individual with the addiction is highly stressful, with detrimental consequences to health and well-being. According to the model, the degree of strain experience is influenced by the availability and access to 3 partially overlapping resources: coping skills, social support, information, and understanding. Specific aims, I already told you that we wanted to provide description of the interventions, evaluate the benefits of this intervention, and to provide thematic description of the treatment process. And this is a search strategy, which I don't think that I need to go through because it's the technical issue. Flow diagram shows the study selection process where we gathered and exclude and include studies according to PRISMA statement, and search of gray literature and contacting expert gave us results as well. And data synthesis were conducted in this way, that the terms used to describe the intervention content tabulated and organized according to our chosen model. And we chose the concepts, information and understanding, coping skills, social support. And during this extraction process, a new category for communication skills was created, because this was central to all interventions that we evaluated. This table shows you the intervention contents checklist, where we could see craft and online CBT, 5-step standard treatment, BCT, CCT, ECT, PG, EFA and GHO's e-therapy. They are kind of online self-help models. But you could see that all these core components are pretty much there. And then we look at the intervention contents specifically and rate what each of these treatment models were providing. And results were in total 17 studies were documented in 19 reports were summarized. 4 out of 9 interventions were online interventions, as you can see here, maybe it's familiar to some of you, and 5 out of 9 interventions were directly directed at CSOs alone. Craft, which it's CBT based, online CBT, 5-step, EFA and GHO. And 4 were directly towards couples and dyads, and those treatments are listed there. And 5 studies were RCTs that are listed here, case studies, exploratory surveys, and 1 study utilized a mixed method approach. Quantitative and qualitative synthesis, we found 7 studies, and effect size estimated for depression and anxiety measures did not indicate any intervention to have better outcomes than others. Core themes in the treatment process identified in the qualitative synthesis included, again, in providing information and understanding of the phenomena, social support, coping skills, communication, and strain relief. And this is the conceptual visualization of qualitative synthesis and findings utilizing the stress strain coping support model, where we could see how all these overlaps together in the circles where stress on CSOs are leading to individual with the gambling problems and strain on CSO. Additional themes influencing the treatment process are gambling behavior, interpersonal nature of gambling problem, motivation for change, comorbidity, personal history, cognitive functioning, barriers to treatment, content and format, like meaning benefits and limitations to diet, treatment, or online setting. And this is also important finding the descriptions to the themes generated in qualitative synthesis of treatment process, where we can see core themes, additional themes here listed. We can talk about it later and go back to these findings if you wish later on. Discussion, the present study adds to the literature along with recent reviews by including qualitative studies and unpublished literature. And in the time since Gorgi and Takis review, numerous novel interventions have emerged. These online treatments, including also low threshold online interventions like EFA and GHO. Furthermore, research on CCT has continued, and the use of 5-step method has been broadened to gambling context. However, new studies on craft or CSTs have not been conducted. Common starting point is to provide psychoeducational information on gambling and APG with variable practices for providing further psychoeducation. Our results revealed divergent approaches to delivering training on coping and communication skills. Craft provides evidence on adaptive and maladaptive coping strategies, which are predefined. The 5-step method, on the other hand, approaches coping skills from the presumption that utility of strategies depends on contextual and situational factors. Whereas CCT addresses the enhancement of coping skills by broadening communication, which ultimately provides support from within the couple's relationships. And lastly, the interventions varied in the degree of the professional support provided, and the facilitation of informal social support also varied between interventions, including access to online forums and face-to-face group meetings in standard treatment. So what we could conclude for all of this systematic review is that range of intervention with different aims, target groups, and models of delivery were identified in the systematic review. The included studies utilize variable methodologies, so that what made it very hard for us to really find what was the best of it. The commonalities and differences in intervention contents were identified along with the themes and influence treatment process. For the variable needs of CSOs to be met, intervention need to be tailored. Assignment to the treatment type is suggested to be based on screening procedures, and that I would really like to discuss with you because you are expert on the area. And future research needs to carefully plan study designs and outcome measures in order to accurately assess mechanisms of change and treatment efficacy. And that's why we could not really conclude the best of or the most efficient one here. We are now in the phase 1 in Finland. We have not really decided yet what treatment in primary, secondary or tertiary level we are going to adapt to Finnish cultural context. But what we have done so far is that we have implemented Bigi Sois, Nikki Dowling's 6-item harm measure to online platform of Peluri, and our aim is to provide a tool for CSOs to identify harms, provide tailored information and available sources to reduce harm, and evaluate further the feasibility and usability of that tool and collect the feedback from the users during 2022 and 23, because we wanted to use that information directly from CSOs who are seeking help to hear their wishes, what they need, how they need to be, how they want to be met, and what type of help they want. And these are the future plans that we are starting at the end of this year. Self-help combined with support, easy model, online perhaps, decide the best available treatment for affected others in Finland, and this the usability and feasibility of the measure we just implemented to the online, and increase the public awareness, decrease stigma, increase healthcare professionals' awareness and early detection of CSOs' harms, and guide them to seek help as early as they could. So it's a lot of information because we've done such a great job in Finland to run through all these results. And I'm more than happy to now discuss freely about how you feel about where we are in Finland right now, or any ideas, questions that you may have for me.
Well, thank you very much, Sari, for that absolutely wonderful run through a very comprehensive set of studies examining affected family members in Finland. I just think that was really the amount of work that you have done and how comprehensive it is a lesson for all of us. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. I've got a load of questions, but I'm sure others do as well. People haven't put anything in the chat. So can I ask if people put their hands up by going on the reaction tab and then put your hand up, and as people put their hands up, I will go to them. And while people are working out how to do that, let me start off with one of my many questions. I think I want to start off with to say thank you, and it's very interesting that you decided to use the stress strain coping support model as a basis for how you were thinking about your systematic review. And it's interesting that you recognize that information was a very central part of it, information understanding. And in fact, we've recently changed the stress strain coping support model to call it the stress strain information coping support model, because we realize how important information is, not only as one of the steps of our 5-step method, but also theoretically realizing how important it is for people to feel more informed, and therefore enable them to feel a bit more in control by feeling more informed. But I'm interested in the extra element that you're suggesting we incorporate into the theoretical model, which is about communication and communication skills. And I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the communication skills, we could look at from this table. It's development of communication patterns to become more reciprocal, open and honest, proposed to be a key factor in achieved sustained change in relation to gambling and interpersonal problems. That is our result in terms of communication. So I believe that as a clinician, this is a study founding, but when I'm so happy that I can combine my field work with the research, because oftentimes, always, the CSOs who come into treatment, they experience of awareness or needs are totally in a different level from the gambler. Oftentimes, the kind of being caught up or really getting into treatment for gambler is a relief, and it's a new start. And for CSO, it's a total shock, and they are so far from each other when they are in a treatment clinic, that it's very important to stress the communication and the right timing of the communication, and that it's really balancing and really fine tuning when you are working with CSOs or gamblers together in the same room or separately. And also communication means that often we are working only with the gambler, only with CSO, sometimes with the couple, depending on how we conduct our clinical work, is to also enhance their understanding of each other's positioning, because it's so different timing for them. I don't know whether I answer.
That's I understand that very much, and from as a clinician, I absolutely understand it. I suppose one of the things that I found most interesting was that in your systematic review of the research, you felt that came over very strongly from the research as well.
Yes, it did. When we dig into all the components that were offered in each treatment, I was happy. I'm happy as a clinician that it actually came out there, very strong element, because this is what we need in know in clinical practice. But when we are trying to put up together with evidence-based treatment, we need to have a backup research behind it. And that's why we've done such a rigorous investigations here, that we could present something that it's easily implementable and easily understandable, time efficient, cost and time efficient. So that's why we are here.
We just had a very nice comment from Argentina, not with a question, but just thanking you for the presentation. Extremely clear, timely, and enriching. I think that's absolutely lovely, and it's nice to get that from Argentina. So here you are in Finland talking to somebody in Argentina. How lovely is that? That's very, very helpful what you've just said about that. And I mean, it's interesting reflecting on the training that we do in the 5-step method and on the handbooks that we have written about it and so on. And you're absolutely right, communication is quite central, and there are certain elements about all of the steps which are about communication, but we've never actually pulled that out as such. So I think that's very, very helpful addition. Thank you. No one's put their hand up yet, so I shall go on and ask you yet another question of mine then. What you said about Johanna's work and the CSO network, I thought was very interesting, and that struck me that really what you're doing in the CSO network is actually it's a Finnish AFINet. So that's what we're trying to do in AFINet internationally. And one of the thoughts we'd had is that maybe we would have AFINet groups in different countries who would be working in their own language and developing, helping us to develop our website so that it was also translated into other languages, but also taking those ideas and developing a local, a national, as opposed to an international network. So it's, without us discussing it, that's exactly what it seems to me you've done. So I'm really pleased about that. Thinking about the Tilty Family Club, all the results you put up were extremely positive, but I'm interested, you were talking about mechanisms of change, and I'm very interested in what you understand, or what you and your collaborators understand, as to how and why these positive changes have occurred. What is it about getting people unmute myself. Sorry, somebody muted me. I'm interested in what it is about getting together maybe 4 times. I don't know why someone someone obviously doesn't want me to talk. What is it about what you do in the family club which has enabled people to reduce strain, shame, improve self-esteem, reconstruct their lost confidence, and so on? Could you comment on that?
I could. I know the Tilty workers. They are walking motivational interview. They have so much love. They have so much care. So they're kind of healing tools by themselves. So I could only see that the personalities and the open-mindedness and acceptance makes a big role. As we know, it makes a huge role when somebody is coming there feeling shame or being embarrassed or is talking about being CSO the first time in their life, that they come to the room with full of acceptance and non-judgmental atmosphere. I believe that is something that we have not researched. Johanna is there, and she's a qualitative guru. So I believe now, inspired by your question, Richard, I think, Johanna, maybe you could put the camera on. We could actually investigate what is happening in Tilty, why these people are benefiting so much with the group cohesion. I think it's a healing group cohesion, normative, not being alone, normative comparison. Those more, my hypothesis is that the group therapy components are playing role. Johanna, you may say something more. You know Tilty professionals as well.
Yes, hello. I'm
Hello.
Johanna, also
Hello.
colleague of Sari's. Nice to be here. So I would add, or I would, I agree with Sari that the workers of Tilty, Katri is here. She wrote in the chat that thank you, Sari, but you are really nice and warm persons with Hannah. Hannah is more, she works or she is like the founder of the family club, and I recently talked with her, and I think that what's, for example, in her case, what is really special is that she's a former problem gambler. Mm-hmm. So she understands the gambling problem very well, and she understands what it's to be a significant other to a problem gambler. But she has also grown during the years of recovery, and she told me that she's not the recovering problem gambler or the problem gambler anymore. She's a professional now. She's an expert by experience, but she's also a professional, and that's how she works when she works with the families at the family club. And I admire the work, both Katri's and Hannah's work at Tilty. And it's very important to have this low threshold place when you can come being yourself and not being afraid of, for example, writing on a, being like surveyed or something, or being judged, or you have to really explain to always a new person, this is my problem, and feel like overwhelmed already by the problem in your family. And I think they both do, and everybody do at the family club, great work.
That's really interesting, and I can fully understand that. But I think in terms of us as also researchers trying to understand process, and as you were talking about mechanisms of change, in a way, what you're postulating here is that it is the therapeutic characteristics of the people running the service, the warmth, empathy, genuineness, the stuff we know about fundamental therapeutic important characteristics to create a proper therapeutic alliance, and their competence in group work. In a sense, you're postulating that it's the general skills as well as the fact that the envelope is around family members of people with gambling problems, and therefore people don't have to keep on explaining what they're doing there or what the effects are, or, because everybody else understands. So it's a general understanding of that as the envelope, and then the basic therapeutic characteristics of the people who are running it. That's, you're postulating those are the fundamental mechanisms of change, rather than, if you think back to the systematic review, what are the things which we ought to be doing? So we ought to be talking about social support, or we ought to be talking about coping. So I think that's a very important area for us all to be thinking about and investigating further. So thank you for that. Candice, you were next, and then Katri, I know you want to come back on this conversation, but Candice, over to you. Can you unmute yourself and put your camera on, please?
Sure. Thanks so much for that. That was very interesting. And just based on the previous the conversation you were just having now, I think as part of my postdoc, sorry, I'm Candice, I'm from South Africa. And so I did my PhD and postdoctoral work around affected family members, focusing specifically on parents who have adolescents with substance use problems or drug addiction problems, more specifically. So I think one of the things in relation to the conversation that you're having now that came up in part of my postdoc work, which was a couple of years ago, but it looked at the questions around, just what it is that parents want and what would be most beneficial for them. You think you're going to get these very profound kind of things that they want, but the thing was around having a space where I can talk to someone is going to help me in itself. And I think that there's also value in the fact that just having that support available in itself becomes so profound to people who do not normally consider themselves as the people who require support or need support, or whether support would be valuable for themselves because they think of the other person with the problem more often. So I think that's also could perhaps be something that could also contribute to why this is successful, is the fact that it is there. Not only about how it is run, but the fact that it is just there is already a step in the direction for families. But I wanted to ask, so my hat is non-clinical, it's more research. And so I wanted to just ask a little bit about if you could say a bit more around how you did the population survey that you spoke about, just how that kind of ran in your country, and just speak about that. And then also I'd love to hear a bit more about the chatbot that you spoke about, and just kind of how that was that something that you developed? Is it something that is available that one could look at to kind of transfer in different spaces? Because we are also looking at using chatbots with young people, more around sexual and reproductive health issues with young girls. But I can see the value of having a chatbot for an affected family member, especially within context of violence or other kind of harms or risks that's happening in the community, in the family, which is a major issue in South Africa, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I just wanted to know a little bit about that, because I am thinking about how to start up my work again here, and just kind of grow this area of work a bit more. So thanks.
You're muted, Sari.
Thank you, Candice, for walking through about what you've done before and your questions. Briefly, I answered with these two population studies. I can, Candice, send you questions how we inquired who the CSOs were, and the harms questions as well, if you are interested to apply the same methodology. So I'm more than happy to collaborate you by email, because then we could look at the questions, and I have in English as well. And the second question regarding chat, Katri is there also hands-on, and Katri is working at Tilty. Maybe Katri can open up how what type of chat discussions are there and how it was developed. So I'll give us
Right, I'm going to call on Katrin next, but before we do that, just about the population surveys, it's great that you are willing to share the questions, and that would be very nice to see a Finnish-South African collaboration on that as well. But how did you fund and organize the national survey?
Yeah, we get the funding based on from our health and social ministry, which is funded by them. So we are very lucky because we have the public health framework in Finland, with which the money comes from 52 Lottery Act, where the harm minimization is one part of also the monopoly providers kind of a goal. So our funding does come from the ministry, but it's linked to how to protect gambling harms in Finland. So we don't need to apply for this agenda. We are so blessed that we have a 4-year set research goals by minimizing harms in political and society level and individual level, developing a treatment, and also running the population and harm studies. So we have a very unique situation in Finland.
And you have ring-fenced funding, which comes from, in a sense, from the gambling industry, because it comes from the lottery. Yeah? It
comes from a ministry.
Yes, but they get it from the lottery. Did you say?
Through the harm reduction.
By law, it's linked to harm reduction law by Lottery Act.
Very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
let me move on. Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, I just want to ask one more question about the survey. Was it a household survey? Was it a online survey? Like, I'm just trying to figure out how you operationalize the survey in terms of just on the ground.
It's the population study, where it's originally a prevalence study, and the other one is harm study, and it was conducted by telephone interview as postal thing. I have the methodology written clearly, so let's
wonderful.
We can look at that.
You two will communicate about that. Let me move now to Katri. Katri, if you could unmute yourself and put your camera on, please.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
So I get back for the family club for a few points. First, in Tiltti, we have these basic rules, which we told to everyone who come to Tiltti, how we operate, how we listen. So everybody knows few basic things, how we're supposed to be in Tiltti. And those basic rules attend also in the family club. So people who go to family club mostly already know how we work, how the dialogue work in Tiltti. And I think that's a big thing that the family club is so successful. But the other one is that before we started it, we noticed that our gamblers that came to us needed to have a conversation with their close ones. And there weren't so many places, and they needed them to be in such context where somebody knew about problem gambling. And then we noticed that we have groups for gamblers and we have groups for close ones, but why don't we have group for both of them? Because then sometimes it's easier, for example, the close one to ask questions from other gambler than their own spouse, and vice versa. And so it's easier to get in the conversation and talk about very, very hard and difficult things when there are other people. It's a peer support, but in large, like family peer support, where you talk the things that are important to you. And I think it's like when people get help, many times it's useful to gamblers get help by themselves, and CSSOs have help by themselves. And then the last like step is to get help together, to get in the same page, to understand and create better future when we listen to each other more than we before listened. And I think that's the strength of our family club.
Thank you. That's extremely well explained. Even more extremely well explained when one considers that you're speaking in another language. But thank you. That's you also had your hand up before that, though. Were you going to comment on anything else?
This was
okay.
That was this, because
okay. So thank you very much indeed for that. Let me move over to Jim Orford, who also has his hand up. Jim, if you can unmute and put your camera on, please.
Yes, thank you. Sari, thank you very much for your talk. Hi. I must say it's very impressive, all the work you're doing in Finland. Thank you very much for giving us such, as Richard says, such a good rundown of all the different things you're doing. My question is really about the future and about scaling up. One of the things we worry about in the UK, and I know other people do in other countries, Gallus Bishop has talked about this in Germany, for example. There's lots of interesting things going on, lots of interesting projects like the ones you've described going on. But we worry that work for helping affected family members is not being mainstreamed. It's not part of mainstream health, clinical, social services. And you're shaking your head, so it sounds as if you agree it isn't in Finland either, although I must say I had the impression you were probably doing as well in Finland as anywhere else, but you're shaking your head nevertheless. So my question is, if you had to pick one way of trying to get the work that we're all doing mainstreamed, would you go for the development of professionally led interventions like craft and 5-step or some other variety? Or would you go for online help for affected family members? Or would you go for more informal, non-professional, socially based interventions like the family club, for example, and developments of the family club? Where would you put your money if you were asking, you're asking the government, the Finnish government, to put some money into mainstreaming services? Where would you advise they put their money?
Sorry, you're muted again.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Jim. I was expecting this question. I'm in a hotspot. Affected family members and their treatment is not been in any favorable position in Finland. Therefore, I share your noddings and concerns. Where would I put my money in? I think what is important is that there is no model that fits all, and tailored approach always recommended. But how do we put that all in one umbrella? My vision is that we would have the like a 3-level intervention. It's like a primary level where we increase public awareness. Then we have a secondary level, which may be like the measure that we implemented with the help and online guidance. Then we know that all the treatments are pretty much leaning on self-help and online. Maybe online supported, maybe online telephone supported or chat supported. But I think there's always place for face-to-face therapy as well. So what should I choose? We couldn't find anything that's the best. I think the next step is to look at some sort of online self-help supported modality, and then look at face-to-face therapy, whether it's couple or CBT, 5-step, or it's very hard to say, Jim. Maybe I call you or come here again and said I can't make a decision what's best, because we really hope to find something that would have been better. I think what I'm forming now in Finland, I'm calling in all the experts and the close, also the CSOs in a big group, and we are hoping to form consensus within among us, that we hear all the partners and see what is the best in a cultural context of Finland. And we also have to look at it, how do we implement that treatment modality in Finland? What is feasible? What is working? Because if we have a session of beautiful approach, which I believe, which is 30 session, which needs training, who's in the field is using it. So that is also something that we need to consider, that the treatment is easily adaptable in our cultural context. So yes, I could not directly give an answer, but what I'm hoping that we could find in Finland something that fits our context and serves the CSOs the best. Different level treatments, and also there is place for those who have a life experience in being CSO as a supportive or linked along with therapy. So that could be also one thing. I don't know.
Can I quickly come back?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
you can.
Thank you. I was afraid, Sari, you'd probably say that you couldn't decide, and that we needed to do a bit of everything, which is probably what I would say myself. But I just pick up on two very significant things I thought you said there. One was early on, you said that the first level ought to be public awareness.
Yeah.
So that rather suggests that everything rests on that. If one's going to mainstream help for family members. So that rather suggests that if one had a limited amount of money, one might actually direct it towards raising public awareness. That was rather than further work on professional treatments. That was one thing. And then towards the end, you said this very interesting thing about.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Oh,
I can hear, Jim.
Yeah.
No.
Now I can hear.
Okay.
You can? Yes. Okay. And then the second interesting thing I would pick up from what you said was that you were getting together various interested parties to try and reach some sort of consensus. And I thought that was very interesting, because generally all the interesting projects that are going on are separate, and people are working really hard and really in very interesting ways, but separately. So getting everybody together to reach a consensus about the way forward seemed to me a very good idea.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that, because it's based on the review. I really can't say, but I think it's important to find a consensus and do the best.
Okay, thank you, Sari. We've been going for an hour and a quarter. Actually, we could go on for a lot longer. Unusually, we had a really good turnout, I think, this time, and that's not unusual, but unusually we haven't lost that many people, which shows how interested everybody is in this, and they haven't logged off yet, which is great. However, before they start doing it, I think I'm going to bring it to a close. So let me just make a couple of closing remarks. First, thank you very much indeed for this. As the audience will know, hopefully, Sari's PowerPoint presentation and the video recording of this will go onto the website under previous webinars. Will go onto the website by the end of this week. Sari, thank you so much indeed for such a wonderful, comprehensive talk. And also, as I say, I'm always in amazement about how people for whom English isn't their first language can be so fluent and present so well in another language. So I think that's just amazing. It'll be great to see you, Sari, and your colleagues, and in fact the whole audience at our conference at the end of this month on the 29th and 30th. Jim was talking about consensus and how unusual it is to get people together and talk about things. And I hope we might have an opportunity to do some of that at an international level. You're obviously going to do it at a Finnish level, but at an international level at that conference. And indeed at the next conference, which I'm going to advertise now. It's next June, but we hope to meet you all in person at next year's face-to-face conference. It's going to be in Rotterdam in Holland over the days of the 15th, the 17th of June. Most of you will already have received a notification of this on a save the date, but also it's on our website under the conferences tab. And so we're very excited that hopefully after our 2018, I think it was, conference in Newcastle in England by 2023, after COVID, we hope to have another face-to-face conference, this time in Rotterdam. Just to say that next month, October's webinar is to be given by Jeremy Segrot from the Centre for Trials Research at the University of Cardiff in Wales. And he's going to be talking on their large RCT, looking at the effectiveness of the Strengthening Families programme for 10 to 14-year-olds in the UK at preventing substance misuse in 10 to 14-year-olds. So that's going to be Tuesday, the 18th of October. At again 2 o'clock UK time. The Strengthening Families programme is an extremely important early intervention programme preventing alcohol and drug problems in young people. Very, very good research results from the US, not such good research results generally from applying it in other countries. It's one of the big issues about cross-cultural work. And so what Jeremy is going to say about their RCT is, I think, very important for all of us in terms of thinking, how do we learn from other countries and why is it, do things work? If they work in one country, do they work when they're transferred? So finally, just to say there are webinars also in November and December, which are on the website. I won't mention them now. And then the webinar program will continue again next year. So I hope to see you all at the conference in the end of this month and also again in Rotterdam in June. And finally, thank you once again, Sari, for such a wonderful, lovely presentation.
Thank you, Richard. You're too kind. And can I see your faces? It's been nice to be here. And Johanna, thank you. Katri, thank you. Charlie, Candice, James, Jim, Johanna. Lovely to see you. And have a wonderful Tuesday evening. And I'll be definitely back for AFINet workshops.
Lovely.
Hi. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all very much and goodbye. See you at the conference before and then next month.
Yeah. See you.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.